Welcome to Love and Growth Podcast. My name is Jason. This is Danielle Bloom, and we're here to talk about relationships.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for coming to the second episode. And this time we want to talk about communication, lack thereof, struggles with, um, and some aspect of success.
Yes.
So, this has been a big one. I'd have to say this has been a big one for us. We've struggled with this a lot. Um, Mostly because I think we had a lot of different upbringings when it came to communication, and we can get deeper into the emotional connection and all that kind of stuff as far as communication is concerned. But I think the biggest thing is just being on the same page and being willing to have a conversation.
Yeah, I think you have to be willing to open up and not hide your feelings. Be able to discuss everything open and honestly.
Yeah, open and honestly, I think is a big. I think that's a big trigger we have to kind of start off with. I think open and honest is a big difference for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because just being open is one thing, just being honest is another, but linking the two together, it's almost like stop lying and tell the truth.
Right.
Because we can tell the truth and we can stop lying, but they don't have to be the same thing. They're not exactly going hand in hand. So when we're talking about communication, we're looking at people and we're actually two people wanting to grow. I think the communication skill, both verbally, non-verbally, that whole thing is a big, call it a big landmine.
Yeah.
You can step in it pretty quick. I know for us, we struggled really hard because I feel when we get into arguments, let's just call them arguments or conflicts, wherever you want to go with it. We both used to have a real bad tendency of living in our own heads, and one person would want to communicate one way, one person would want to communicate the other way. I know I was it's a big shock, very aggressive when it came to addressing situations. There was always just kind of like attack, 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 attack,
Yeah.
attack. You really shut down,
Yeah.
not only just from that, but I think then your communication style switched into, well, I'm just going to text him.
Yeah, because there was no, it almost felt like the only way I could get you to hear anything I was saying was through a text.
Yeah, and I'll say being angry, I didn't want to read. It just kind of turned into like a Hulk mode where it was just you just want to smash
Right.
everything and run straight through it.
Yeah.
And I think for us that was a big. I think we both had to level up a little bit when it came to it, where I had to be clear-headed enough to read what you were saying and actually digest it, and also slow myself down, just not a constant barrage of trying to find out what's going on.
Right. And I had to stop myself from shutting down and running away.
Yeah, I think that's a different situation too, because I know I can be a lot to handle, especially when
That's an
things
understatement.
especially when things are hard. Like if one of us isn't good or both of us aren't good, God, forbid, that communication level is broken. I mean, we were broken. So regardless of what I would say or try to fix or figure out, it wasn't going to go anywhere because your headspace was shut down, my headspace was attack and figure it out, and neither one of us were going to solve any problems.
Yeah, because we wanted it our way. This was going to be our way. This is our way of dealing with it. So what do you mean you don't deal with it this way?
Yeah, I think I carry that a lot from the relationships previous, both good and bad. I had to be kind of more aggressive because I was pushed down with things or I was suppressed with emotions. I wasn't good at connecting emotions with conversation. So it wasn't easy for me to really verbalize what I needed to say.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense. My conversation was pure logic with no connection to anything else. So even though it made sense, it didn't get us anywhere. Because logically, like this is what logically has to happen.
You worked on logic and I worked on emotion.
Yep.
And it just took us a long time to figure out how those two things work together.
Yeah. It's not even just together. They both play a role in what we're doing. So I can't function fully unless I have the emotional component in what we do. When we're building the family, like we can't build this family completely on logic.
Right.
It doesn't work because let's face it, the kids are crazy. we're crazy. I mean, it just doesn't happen. So logic doesn't work in every aspect of it. But when we look at things and we start to put things together, there's got to be an element of logic when we're creating the path forward and when we're talking to each other, because there has to be a desired outcome in the conversation. We're not just going to go into a conversation to go, hey, what are you doing tonight? Hey, what are you doing tonight? Well, I don't know. I don't know. What do you want to eat? I don't know. Like, there's a desired outcome that comes through it. But being in touch enough with the emotional side to know that some things or words are going to trigger people different. I think that's been a hard growth for definitely for us.
Yeah.
But now we see it trickling, not even between us, but coming down to the kids and having that aspect kind of come together.
Yeah, yeah, because we can watch the kids and you can see Jordan is my mini and JC is your mini.
Yeah, she's pure. She'll wake up and choose violence
And
9
he'll
times
run
out
away.
of 10. Yeah, and I think, but that's great though, because I think with us going through that journey of communication and figuring things out allows them to have a platform to grow off of, because we can communicate with them a little bit differently and they can communicate with each other. Not well, one, because
Right.
that's, they're still children and growing and developing, but at least there's a stable platform that people want to communicate.
Yeah.
And I think going into that, and tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm kind of off, I think just the art of communication between people, like wanting to communicate, is not something that's really sought after.
Well, I also don't think it's something that we really teach, right? Like, I don't think that communication is something that is taught.
Okay.
I think it's just something that it's like, oh, you should just know how to do this.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy.
Right.
So it's, there's different forms of communication, there's different ways to communicate. And then there's just like, oh, you don't know how to do this, or you don't do this just like I do. What do you mean?
Not only is communication not taught, but with the way society works and the way we all function now, it's so much easier to just grab a phone and text message and send a video or send this and send that without having a back and forth dialogue.
Right.
I know that you use kind of like the video chat apps.
Yeah.
So you message back and forth, but it's not a back and forth.
Because you're not having an active conversation.
Yeah, it's you make a statement, they make a statement, I make a statement, you make a statement, but it's not a dialogue.
Right.
It's just a series of one-liners.
Right.
So not only is it not taught, it's almost pushed away. Like, think about this: whenever a phone rings, like, you don't want to pick it up.
That's true. I hate talking on the phone. It's true. I don't pick up my phone ever.
Right.
Don't call me, text me.
Yeah. Don't call me, text me, and I'll call you back if it's warranted. But that's the biggest thing, because we've taken that so far out of our skill sets and out of wanting to develop that,
right,
that we carry that not only from work to kids to relationships. We tend to lose track of having an actual ability to communicate and knowing that there's a deeper level to it.
Right. And I think that that's one of, if not the most important thing in a relationship, is to learn how to communicate with your partner.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, before, when we weren't communicating, like, it was terrible.
It was terrible.
But now that we've learned it, we haven't just, so I feel like learning our communication styles and learning just the skill of communication has made us connect so much on a deeper level. And it's made us comfortable to talk to each other no matter what the issue is. There's nothing that I feel uncomfortable bringing to you.
Yeah.
There's no subject that is like off limits, and that's something that we grew into a lot too, because there were certain subjects that it was like, we don't talk about this.
Yeah. Well, to go on top of that, I think we're trending into another topic of trust.
Yeah. Well, I meant more so like even finances, right? Like, that's a subject that comes up a lot.
But I get exactly what you're saying. But the idea is to communicate with each other, there has to be some sort of base foundation of trust.
Yes.
There has to be a foundation of trust that you're going to listen to what I have to say, I'm going to respond in kind, and it's going to be a back and forth.
Right. Trust, security, and safety. You have to feel safe that that what you say is not going to get thrown back in your face.
Yes.
That what you say is going to be accepted and thought through and talked about and not just used as a weapon.
Oh shit, yeah. Yeah, that's hard. And I think for both people that's hard because I know I fucked up a lot. And I know I did a lot of fucked up things and lied and did all those things. And I knew that when we talked and that came up, regardless of how far we thought we had advanced, it would still come up. And it would still come up. So I didn't have a trust factor. Well, I broke the trust factor for the shit that I did. But two, I didn't have a trust factor that you wouldn't keep throwing it back at me. So that just kept our all of our conflicts in just a constant cycle.
Right. Well, quite to use that for an example is that we didn't really talk about that.
No.
That was one of the things that was like, it's off limits. Like it's done, it's off limits.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, no, I need to heal, so I need to talk about it.
Right.
And you were like, no, I need to heal, so we're just going to close the book and move on.
Right.
So that was like a big discrepancy with us, with just how we needed to handle that conflict.
Yeah. That was hard. It was super hard. Because I mean, also hard because kind of like we talked about before, like I didn't have an emotional attachment to conversations. So it was like logically I went, you told me it was over, you told me you forgive me, you told me we moved on, like done. So I couldn't even I wasn't even at the place where I could grasp your emotional connection to it. I'm just like, you already said logically you wrote on this contract. We're good, we're moving, we're going forward. Like
right.
So for you to go back to it, I was like, I don't get it. Like this
right.
sucks.
And it wasn't like I randomly just like, God, what was wrong? Blah, 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 blah. It was like something would trigger it.
Yeah.
Or something would happen and it's like, okay, well, give me closure for this.
Yeah.
Like I was looking for, just give me closure. Tell me everything so there's no hidden surprises down the road. Whatever it is, like just open up and pour your soul out to me. And you were like, no, thank you.
I don't know if it was no thank you to say. It wasn't completely no thank you. It was I don't know what that means. I think that's a big thing. Like I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it meant to be all into this, to be in that moment, to just give everything, to open every door. I didn't know what that was. So it wasn't even that. I was like, no, I don't even know what that means. I didn't know what that means until later on when we kept developing and developing, developing, having conversations, having hard fucking conversations, and just tears and yelling and screaming and holding and running and everything known to humankind. We went through it all to get to the point where it was like, we're both in. We're both talking. We're both now it went from fights lasting for days to fights lasting for minutes. And not even reaching a quarter of the intensity that they went through. They're going to reach an intensity because we are what we are.
We're both stubborn and thick-headed, and that's it.
I'm explosive. I know I'm explosive, so I know it's difficult for me that I could just shoot off. But it's like finding that rhythm and that ability to trust through communication, I think made a huge difference for us. And I think that's a scary thing. I know from my perspective, I can't talk from yours. I know as a man, having the trust factor to be willing to put yourself out there because you're raised to just say like, not even that emotions don't matter, but you're raised to just be clear, concise, go. Like that's it. You don't have to dwell on it. You don't have to hold it. You don't have to do anything. Like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. We have work to do. We have this to do. We have that to do. So to hold on to something, I would just either bottle it up or just not address it, or it just didn't happen at all until I just exploded.
Right.
And then to have the trust factor that I was able to be vulnerable in the conversation, to say that what you're saying makes me feel this way or that way, building that bridge within me, I think was just, it opened up a whole new world to anything that was going on.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, growing up, I was always kind of by myself. I kept everything to myself. So it was easy for me to shut down.
Yeah.
it was very easy for me just to shut down and not have to deal with conflicts. I'm definitely like more of a conflict avoider, and you're more of like a conflict.
Agitator. I
Give it
want,
to me.
yeah, I'm full. If conflict is coming, I'm going. I'm running straight at it.
Yeah, and I'm more so like, bye.
Hold on, let's put a pin on that real quick because I want to dive into that a little different because I don't think people realize the difference of what a conflict avoider is. And I think we hear it a lot when we talk to people. We hear a lot about people pleasing. And a coach of mine before he really brought that up and nailed it down. It wasn't we're not people pleasers. Like we don't do things to please people. We do things to avoid conflict. So we're conflict avoiders when we're doing that. We're not trying to please somebody. We're trying to avoid the pain
Mm,
of having that conflict.
right.
And I think communication is seen as a pain. Like it's a pain to have a conversation.
Well, it's a pain. It's a pain to have a serious or a real conversation. It's hard to have a conversation based around emotion.
Mm. Talk to me about that a little bit.
So, like, I think it was definitely harder, and we had to build our way up to those real and raw conversations. Like,
Mm.
okay, here's the dirty,
Yeah.
here's the mess, here's where we are, and not hold anything back.
Yeah.
And kind of like you were saying, let out those tears, let out the screaming, let out the
Right.
holding, let out the, all the things that come with it.
Right. Yeah. That came from that having the smaller conversations and building the trust factor that you weren't going to throw things back in my face. I wasn't going to talk down to you. We were going to have a back and forth and knew that the other person came from a place of love versus a place of judgment.
Right. And I think approach is a big thing too.
Yeah.
Like I think if I came at a conversation with you and I was like, well, right off the bat, it's gonna cause a defense and it's
Yeah,
gonna
you
cause
put
an
it all right
argument.
out. Right.
Right. Whereas if you say, hey babe, like something happened and I just wanted to discuss how it made me feel.
Yeah.
It's going to be received a lot better than if I'm coming and in attack mode.
Yeah. The other thing with that is you got to look at not only the way you approach it, but the scenario at which you approach it. Like the way you approach something, not just the words you do it, but your attitude towards it. Like
Your
if you
body
your
language.
body language, even if you say something soft, but you're stomping at somebody, like, okay, we're gonna fight. We're gonna. I know what's happening. I know what comes next. Somebody walks up in my face. I don't care what kind of smile you have. Like that's coming next. So but that's a learning curve too, because I know my aggressiveness is going to come off a lot different than yours. Yours isn't going to be the same approach with it, and your approach with me isn't the same as your approach with other people either.
True.
And that's good. That's the way it should be because there's a different level of trust and there's a different level of platform built on that. Because we got to think of it as tiers. Communication's got to happen in tiers. You have your base level like feeling things out, like your first date, you're getting to know somebody, you're trying to learn the nuances of they like this, they don't like that, don't curse, don't this, don't that, don't and then by the time you get the third, the fourth, the year in, your relationship change, your communication style change, everything like that. But it's constantly evolving. And it has to constantly evolve because we can't talk to each other the same way now that we will in 5 years from now.
Right.
We'll be different people, different scenarios will be there. We'll have leveled up and seen things and gone through things that'll change everything. The same way that we can't talk to each other the way we did 5 years ago.
Right.
Like that would be there would be a nuclear bomb every single day just because that's where we were.
Right.
So having that idea that just because you make a change in communication today, one, don't expect it to change tomorrow.
No, it takes a lot of intention.
Yes, intention is a great word.
You have to do a lot of intentional work to build up your communication.
But two, also understand that that other person might not be ready to take another step. Those two things are critical because you have to be willing to put the work in and intentionally make an effort to see the other person's perspective and understand that and know which buttons to push, what not to push, when to push. And the flip side of it is realizing that that other person might not get it or want to get it. And they just, this is how I am. What's the old story? Like, this is just how I am.
My way or the highway.
This is
Take it or
how,
leave it.
this is how I talk. This is how I communicate. This is how I this. Well, this is how I've always done it. I
This
can't
is how I've always
stand that.
done it. Yeah.
There was a time, I can't remember how many times we used to say that all the time. Well, this is how we do it.
Well,
Why?
why?
Why do we have to do it that way? Why do we have to communicate this way? Why do we have to have a blow up and then wait 3 minutes and then you send a text and I blow up in a text and then you send another text because I'm blowing up, and it's like, why? Why do we have to do that? Why does that have to be the stable platform? And that's a situation where you have to evaluate that yourself. Like, why do you want to function that way? Is that way of functioning getting you to where you want to go?
Right. I mean, that's the big question asked for us. No.
No, it didn't.
For
No.
us, it was a no. For us,
It was killing us.
we sat down and said, okay, either we change or this is not going to work. Either we're going to stick together and we're going to make those changes,
Yeah.
which is sort of, we talked about that in the first episode a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
when you make that ultimate decision, like, our relationship is not working the way that it is.
Right.
So, route A, break up. Route B, fix it.
Or worse yet, no, there's 3 routes to that. Like, route A might be break up. Route B might be fix it, but C is people that just
Stay the same.
stay the same.
Ugh.
Like, you live that same. Just, this is how it's going to be. It's
Yeah.
never going to be any different than this. This is where it's going to go. And hopefully, you get to the point at that where it's, you can't tolerate it anymore, and you choose A or B.
Right. Because if you're staying at C, you're not growing. You're not growing in your relationship. You're not growing in your life. You're not growing like,
You're not growing anything. Yeah, it's holding yourself back, and you're almost intentionally making yourself upset.
yeah.
Like,
You're choosing to live a miserable
you're
life.
choosing to live that life. And anybody that, no offense to those of you lost, but anybody that says the way that they're functioning now is the way that they want to function forever doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense to you because that's a fixed mindset and you have a growth mindset.
Yeah, but I get it. But just saying in general, I want to give people grace in the sense that I know where you're at. We've been there. We've been to the point. We've had the fights of, this is just how I am. We've both said it. We've both used it. We've been that way. And that got us to nowhere but the next fight. However long it took for that next fight to happen. And fascinating enough, the next fight looked exactly like the last fight.
Yep.
And it just
You could predict it. You could say, oh, well, this is what's going to happen next. And then after that, and you could predict literally every single.
It was almost written like
argument.
it was almost written like a script of a television show.
Yeah.
And you just put that shit on repeat all the time. Yeah. And it was a matter of time before the same talking points came out every time, because neither one of us addressed it. Because we would be better at the end of the fight, but we never took any action after the conversation to change anything.
Right.
So it's just like, okay, we're good now. Like, let's back to normal life. What are we having for dinner? And then 2 weeks later or 2 days later, it didn't even matter. Boom.
Right. Because it would come back up because there wasn't a solution.
Yep.
It was just like, okay, we're done talking about this now.
Right.
We didn't come together with, okay, well, this is how you feel and this is how I feel. So how do we meet in the middle and how do we make this better?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even meeting in the middle. Sometimes we have to understand that I'm coming to some conversations and conflicts with some bullshit. And sometimes I can't meet you in the middle. Like, I have to go 3/4 of the way because I had to get out of my own fucking stories in my own fucking head. Like, my head was screwed up, and vice versa. However it works, there's not always going to be a 50-50. Like, relationships are never a true, in my opinion, they're never a true 50-50. Maybe in some areas you could see like a 55-45, but like, at the end of the day, you have strengths, I have strengths. You have weaknesses, I have weaknesses. If they're both the same, it doesn't work. Because you're just both doing the same things and you're going to fight about the same things. So that growth pattern has to be, okay, there's going to be a conversation, there's going to be a conflict. And to just say, okay, well, let's cut the baby straight down the middle. Like, that could fuck you later on because it's not going to make any sense. because maybe I didn't need to come 50%. Maybe I needed to come 20% to make it work. But you have to come 60, 70, 80% for us to actually get the place that we want to be. So I think looking at that and looking at conversations, I think conversations need to, it's going to sound odd to say, but conversations need to be linked not only to an outcome, but to a vision of what you want it to be. Like, what is my expectation coming out of this conversation?
Yeah, expectation. That's a good word. Because we don't talk about that. We don't talk about, oh, well, my expectation for you is this. My expectation for this scenario is this. My expectation is, and a lot of people won't discuss that.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, what do you mean you didn't know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a mind reader.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right. And I think that's a lot, having those expectations in your head and not sharing them with your partner causes a big disconnection, because you're like, well, they should just know what's in my head.
Right.
Why? Do you know what's in their head?
Yeah.
Don't assume that your partner knows what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's big. That's super big, because I went into there because I just assumed that my mind works like everybody. I've learned that's not the case. But having the same, but even having the same expectations for us, because on the other side of our conflict, what I wanted to be the outcome of it and what you wanted to be the outcome of it, we didn't know. Because I think at the end of the day, we have to say, okay, I don't just want things to be better. I want us to go through this fight, and I'm on the other side. This is what I want it to be. This is what I'm attached to. So what I'm going to do is I want to go through this conversation. I want to go through this conflict. And at the end of it, my goal is to be attached to that.
Yeah.
And the only way I'm going to get there is for us to have this conversation, to figure out where each other are, set the expectations and the boundaries of where we're going, and then what action items are we both taking and leaving from. I know we just had that blow up the other night.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I just wanted to say that that's a point I wanted to hit on, was that if you don't communicate, you can't have conflict resolution. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, just like everything. I mean, we don't make growth when things are good. Like, things are good, it doesn't happen.
You grow from
Like,
that.
when if you're lifting, I mean, I go back to lifting weights. Like, I don't get bigger muscles by just being happy in the gym. Like, I have to put the bar on my back. I have to go through the exercise. I have to sweat. I have to hurt, and it's going to happen. And that pain and that struggle is what grows. Those conversations that are the hardest fucking ones to have. Like, that's where the growth comes from. If you both have a level of trust and expectations and boundaries, but you set clear, actionable items at the end. This is what we're going to do.
Right.
And that was a huge one I think we came out of the other night, which was awesome. We were like, okay, so this is what's going on. This is where we're looking to go. What do we need to do now to make this happen?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that whole conflict started to begin with because we didn't know where we wanted to go.
Right.
We were both like, fuck this and fuck that, but now what?
Yeah.
And we each had our own story. Like, you were like, fuck this over here. And I'm like, well, fuck that over there.
Right.
And then it was like, well, what are we going to change?
Yep.
What are we going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was,
how do we take your shit and my shit and both of us get over our own shit and come together?
Yeah.
Did you get all that shit?
There's a lot of shit in there. The conversation had a lot of shit in it. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of regular shit. For those of you who listen to this that are a little put off by cursing, I apologize. Maybe it's the wrong show at some points, but that's the idea.
I don't apologize. That's who we are.
I did. No, that's true. Yeah, I apologize more for your perspective. So looking at that, let's break it down a little bit deeper, and let's go back and kind of recap the stages of it, because I think communication it's a tricky subject, and I know we can't knock it out in one conversation because it's a lot. Because whenever there's something that's one person, I need to fix this, or you need to work on that, and this is my goal for this. It's fine. I can control that. But a conversation, you can't control what the other person is going to say. The only thing you can do is come from your own perspective and how you show up to it. So in order to have a real conversation, I think laying ground, not ground rules, but having a basic level of understanding between two people is going to be key. And you do that by building trust factor in each other. And that's being willing and open and vulnerable to say, hey, this is how I feel with this. Like, let's not do that. Or I need time. Or I need this. I need that. Not to use them as excuses,
Right.
but to be honest about it.
Right. And I would say that that's 100% okay. If you're approaching a conversation and you're not ready to have that conversation, say that, but make sure you revisit it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a hard lesson, I think, for you, because you'd want to just be like, I dismissed it, it's done.
It's gone.
Where I'm like, no, you have to come back. You have to come back to me. Like, come back.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, I'm all done.
That was, yeah, because for me, it was once it was out of my head. You told me it was done. Okay, we're done. Like, even if it was just a piece of it, if I got that little inkling that I can move past it, like, cool, I got 500 other things I need to get to. Like, let's do those. But really diving deep, and I wasn't communicating well enough in the sense that I was dismissing a lot of stuff because I was only on my story. I was only in my head. I was only dealing with my stuff. So being vulnerable, being honest, being transparent, but I think being concise, which sounds like a counterintuitive when it comes to an argument, but this might be me, and I'm going to throw it out there. But I feel like when we get wrapped up and we need to talk about what's going on, but what do they call it? Beating a dead horse doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's like one key to communication. It's clear and concise.
Yeah.
You don't need word vomits all over the place. Or like you said, you don't need to beat a dead horse. Like, be clear and concise.
Yeah. Because there's times where you get into it and it's like, well, you're saying the same thing. Now you're saying it again, just with a different word at the beginning.
And I do that a lot.
I think most people
I think that's one of my problems, because you'll say that a lot. Stop repeating yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the communication thing that we have to deal with. Like, but at first, when I used to say like, stop repeating yourself, used to blow up to me like, you don't listen to me. And you know why? Because I didn't listen. Like, because you would say the same thing 3 times, and I might have heard half of the first one, a quarter of the second one, none of the third one, because at that point I lost interest in my head went somewhere else. So that's still a growing process for us, because I think that's a part where I need to build more trust, that I'm actually listening to you the first part. So maybe it's just something where I have to give a little bit more acknowledgement or some sort of movement to let you know, like, I got it.
Acknowledgement. I think that's another key, because I will repeat myself until you acknowledge me.
Yeah.
I will talk in your face and annoy the shit out of you until you acknowledge that I'm speaking to you.
Good thing the 3-year-old picked that one up.
Ask the teenager; he gets that all the
And
time.
a teenager. But that comes from years of being ignored. Your statements being ignored, your emotions being ignored, and it's not going to go away right away.
Right. And that's not just something from our relationship. That's something from years and years, previous relationships and growing up. And
yeah. Well, I mean, hear this true. Like, please keep this in mind. If you're listening to this and you're in that growth phase where you really want to level up, not only yourself, your relationship, your communication, everything like that, when you're dealing with the trust factor between people, we've had bad habits for years. Like, I've done stupid shit for years. I can't fix that in 30 days. I can't fix that in 45 days. It's an ongoing process to constantly improve and make adjustments and change and return and report and see what worked, what didn't work, and change things. And you have to do that throughout even the communication gap. It's like, I communicated this way for 20 years. Now I have to change. Yes, if you want a different outcome and you want to have a different life, yes, you have to change. But be willing and understanding and have grace and hold space for the other person if they're not changing as fast and they're not growing as fast, because it's hard. I know it's hard definitely hard for me, because being stuck in my own ways, well, I know this works, but it only works to here. it doesn't get me any further. So having that growth pattern and being willing to hold space for me as I change and I hold space for you as you change with it, uh, it allows us to be more comfortable speaking and knowing that I'm only speaking because I know that you love me, that you're not going to hold it against me and bring this back. Like you're not, I mean, you're probably making a mental note. Women seem to do this. Like you make a mental note and it can come back like 10 years from now. Like you can't remember what you had for dinner last night, but
No, but I
10
can
years
remember 10
of
years
what I
ago
said.
on the spot, on this date, at this time, you fucked up here.
Yep.
Or I can remember that, 7 years and 9 nights ago, you said this statement.
So be careful what you say. That interrogation light is always going to be on. But I half joking. I'm going to say half joking in that one. But reality is when you grow into it, you know that that person loves you and wants the best and isn't coming from a place of like, how dare this motherfucker say this? And just be willing to have this conversation out of love and knowing that at the end of it, you want a better outcome from it and you're willing to do the work to do it, I think speaks volumes for two people.
Yeah.
So that's that's the thing that I really want to get across with people is like you have to be willing to do this. You have to really want and put effort into it and hold space for people that just don't get it right away.
Yeah. I mean, relationships are hard work, and always, there is always room to improve your relationship. There is always room to work on your relationship. Like your job is never done.
Yeah. It can't be. I mean, at that point, it can't be done because you have so much more to do.
Yeah.
There's always another level to grow off of. There's another thing to have you do. There's always another job to get done. You have another kid. You move to a new place. You have a tragic incident in the family. There's always something different changing. And as the world constantly evolves, like so do your relationships.
Yeah.
Your foundations don't change.
I would say another key component to communication that gets left out a lot, that gets forgotten, active listening.
Mm. That's because we're always out to well, you're going to say this and I'm going to say this back. I want this ready and primed to
Right. Well,
go.
or it's almost like you said, like you wouldn't listen and I would repeat myself and whatever, but I just want to make sure we're listing like key components of
Yeah.
communication.
There's like I said, there's too many to go through in just one communication talk. I think communication will come up a lot more time. And let us know if it's something that you guys want to hear more of or dial it a little bit deeper, please.
Or just tell us to shut up. That's fine.
Or tell us our communication sucks and we can just move on to something else. But having that idea of active listening and just we're so afraid to have silence in conversation because I know for me silence equals negative thoughts. Well, what are they thinking? What about this? What about that? What about this? Whereas the other person could just be thinking.
Processing.
Yeah. And I think for me it was like everything was go go go. Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Why aren't you answering? Why is it like
Yeah, we actually just had that come back up when we got into that tiff the other night, and I stopped talking for a second, and you're like, well, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Just processing."
Yep.
And you're like, "Okay, I thought you were going to bed or something." Like I just stopped talking for 30 seconds.
Yeah. That's why it's a constant evolving thing.
Yeah.
Again, you have to you've done things so certain ways for so many years. It doesn't change overnight. It doesn't change in a year. Like
No, it's always a work in progress.
yeah.
Always. And then, I mean, we've come so far in our communication skills. We've come so far in learning how to talk to each other and in learning how to have those real conversations. And it's still a work in progress for us. It's still intentional for us to make these choices. It's still
Yeah. No, I appreciate you even being willing to grow and have some of the conversations and sitting through some of the shit that we've been through. Because I know for me, uh, I've said it forever. Like I'm not the easiest person to be with. I'm not the easiest person to be with personally in business. I'm not for everybody. I get it. I've grown and understood. But for you to actually have the willingness to not only hear me, not judge me, and just grow with me has been, something I honor and treasure for everything. But on the flip side, my job for that is to match that drive and determination in the sense that I have to now give you a vulnerable me, an open me, and everything, and that's my end of the bargain to come up with this.
Yeah.
So it's
And that's not easy. I don't think that's easy for a lot of men.
Yeah.
In general, I think it's hard for you to show a soft side.
Yeah. It's not even. I don't even know if it's just a soft side. It's kind of like an openness, just being like, hey, I'm willing to say this. So it might not even be something that makes it soft. It's just an openness that you're not going to judge me on whatever it is.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. It is not soft like, oh, you're so soft, God. No, but like
Sometimes.
you have like this side where you can take your wall down.
Yeah.
You have this side where you can be approachable and where you want and are accepting of love.
Yeah.
Rather than being that hard masculine all the time.
That's a lot. That's a lot for me. Because I know there's times where it's like, you just want to love me, and I'm like, I don't want anything right now. Like, just get away from me. And that was a form of communication that was, whew, that threw us off the map a bunch of times. Just because I get so wrapped up into things, I'm aggressive. I'm right in. Like, I'm in this. And I think the other day it was like, you just came up just to show love and rub my shoulders, and I was just in the middle.
You were like, get off me, go away.
I was like, just stop. Like, just stop.
But because of communication, I know not to take that personal. I know that he's not being mean to me. I know that he's just in the zone at work. So that allows me to go, okay. And then later that night when he's done work, he'll come up to me and give me a hug and he'll say, sorry, I was just in the moment. Like, and it doesn't turn into a fight. Yeah. It doesn't go any further than that. All right, well, he's in the moment. He's deep in his work thought right now. Like, and he just needed me to go away. Yeah. I don't take that personal.
No, but a lot of people would.
Because they don't communicate it.
Right. Because you wouldn't understand. It's just like, I'm just trying to do this. And I think just trying, like, having that statement in front of it is like, but just because you just want to try and do that doesn't mean the other person wants that.
Right.
Like, the running joke was like, you can't force your love on me.
I can, and like, you will take it. Okay.
I will.
I can, and I will take it.
I will at the appropriate times. I completely will. I'm okay with that. But there's got to be certain times where we're just like, we can't communicate right now, and that's okay. You get this done, I get that done, and we come back together. But at the end of the day, communication is the key to not only loving as a couple, because I think that those key components that are within the communication, the trust, the vulnerability, the consistency, that type of thing that's built into actually learning to communicate with each other. But when you take that and you level that up to the next stage of your life, that's the foundation of what you do next. Because now you have somebody that's growing into a partner because you can talk back and forth. You don't have everything that's just one side of this or one side of that. There's a back and forth that happens that allows you to take the next step. So be it a new job, be it a big move, be it a big life decision, you know that you have somebody that you can actually communicate with, and you have a partner in that moving thing to make that happen. Because it's not just the communication itself, it's all those other keys that dial into that. Sounds right? So, anything else that you want to kind of get off your chest? I think we beat communication to death, at least this time around, unless you tell us, hey, you guys missed 9, 10, 11, 12 different things, which is 100% possible.
Well, but like you said, I mean, there's a lot that we can cover. So for us, I think communication wraps up as clear and concise, open and honest.
Real and raw.
real and raw, listen, and take action.
Oh shit, yeah, take action. Take action at the end. Everything has to come through and take action. I love those. I think those are great. Perfect. Um, so hopefully this guy's brought you a little bit of value. You're able to use some of this. But please just practice. Don't just rely on this is how it's always done. This is what we've always done. Take this, use it, take this show alone and take action from it. Figure out where you want to go next. Hold grace, hold space for somebody that's growing with you, and really just level each other up. I think it's awesome. So thank you so much for being with us again, talking about communication, getting things done. Check us out if you haven't. If you're on YouTube, leave us some comments underneath. Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. Still figuring out all this other podcast shit. We'll get there. I promise.
Follow us on Instagram, Love and Growth Podcast.
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe, however you would like to support us or not.
And please, if this is something that you found value in, share it. We're doing a lot of this stuff organically, and really, we're just in this to see people win. We want to see people win and grow and love more and just have such a bigger life.
We want to share the love and the growth, and that's where we are.
And that's where we are. Love and
Love
growth.
and growth.
So leave us a review, leave us some love, comments, feedback. We want to know. We appreciate you so much. Appreciate you.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.